Everybody, it's Leisha from Caught by Design. Today I want to share with you a really cool technique that you can do with the Artesprix acrylic paints. Now I want to apologize to you right off the bat. You're going to see some annoying black bars on either side of the recording. It's because I shot this video not thinking about really posting it to YouTube. I was going to post it on Instagram. Turns out I like the project so much, I thought other people might like to see the technique, and I'd already shot it in vertical format instead of horizontal. So again, I apologize. If you just bear with me, I think you'll still enjoy seeing the process. You'll also notice that parts of the video are sped up. The tutorial itself is about 17 minutes long, but the actual process only took me about 30 minutes, start to finish, from getting out my supplies to mixing the paints, making the transfer, and pressing it. So it really is a quick project, and it's got a lot of wow factor, and I think you're really going to like it. So let's get started. The supplies you're going to need are a sublimation blank, the Artesprix sublimation acrylic paints, some cardstock or mixed media paper, something a little bit heavier than copy paper, a pencil, the Artesprix color mixing chart if you want to have some, exact colors, a small paintbrush, some Artesprix protective paper, a little cup of water, some plastic wrap, and a styrofoam plate or some other surface to mix your paint on. Now you won't see in the video, but you're also going to need some Artesprix heat tape, some paper towels, maybe some wipes to clean up your hands, and the Artesprix protective mat comes in really handy as well. Now you'll notice that I have my workspace covered. The paint can transfer if it's exposed to any type of heat, so I like to cover my workspace with some butcher paper, or you could use newspaper, whatever, just to protect it. And I'm tracing the blank here with a pencil onto a sheet of cardstock. You'll want to trace all the edges all the way around and including that little circle in the middle. With this technique, it's not necessary that you get an exact placement of the blank onto the design, onto the painted surface, but you do want to make sure that you've painted a large enough surface to cover the blank. So I'm going to tear off a piece of plastic wrap and make sure that it is large enough to cover the blank, the area that I traced. Again, just to make sure that when I create my design, I've got a large enough area to cover the blank. So that looks good. Kind of got it, spread out there so I know that it's large enough. Then I'm going to start mixing the paint according to the Artesprix color mixing chart. I'm going to mix up 3 different colors. One is called Pool, the other is Violet, and the third is Sea Glass. Now these colors become very intense when they are pressed, so if you're trying to get an exact shade of something, I would recommend that you mix your paint and then put it on a little swatch and press it and test it just to be sure. So Pool is 1 part blue and 5 parts white. So I'm just squeezing out some blue, and then I'll squeeze out about 5 times as much white. Violet is 1 part purple and 5 parts white. So the purple is equal amounts of blue and red. So I'll put that down, some red and then some blue. And then I'll put about 5 times as much white for that. Squeeze it out, just kind of eyeball it. Our last color is going to be Sea Glass, which is 1 part emerald to 5 parts white. And the emerald is 1 part yellow to 5 parts blue. So I'm going to start out by squeezing out a little bit of yellow, and then about 5 times as much blue. Again, just eyeballing it. And then I'll kind of look at how much is there and squeeze out 5 times as much white. It's going to look like a lot of white because, you know, I've got basically 6 drops there, or 6 parts already of blue and yellow, so I need a lot of white. Then I'm going to start mixing them together. And I want to mix them together to where it's pretty uniform. I don't want any streaks in it. And like I said, these colors, don't think that the color you're seeing while you're mixing is going to be the end color, because it's going to be much, much more intense. I'm just using the same brush and kind of wiping off the excess in between colors and then mixing it up. I didn't even rinse it when I went from the pool to the violet, because they were kind of a similar color shade. But I will wipe off the excess and then rinse it in some water when I go from purple to, or I'm sorry, violet to sea glass. Also, you want to make sure that you mix up plenty of paint for this technique. Not only do you not want to have to color match later, but when you put this paint on the plastic wrap, it dries really quickly. And so we've got to get plenty of paint on there. And so here you'll see I've added a little bit more yellow and a little bit more white just to kind of get the shade that I want. And I'll mix that up really well. And once I've got all my paint, I'm ready to start putting it on the plastic wrap. Now you'll see that I've got the traced blank underneath there. In hindsight, I don't think I would do that. I was doing it so I could make sure that I had a big enough space, and then I go on to use that same traced blank here later on in the tutorial. But what happens is you can get some paint splatters on that plain piece of paper, and then the Artesprix paints are really strong and they can come through. So I would either use a different sheet of paper, or I would have moved that paper out from underneath. I still think it's good to have it kind of as a guide for size, but you do run the risk of getting some paint splatters on it. So I've just put some of the sea glass in random spots, and now I'm putting the violet in some random spots, and then I'll go to doing the exact same thing with the pool. Just trying to, get some coverage in there, and I'm kind of keeping the paint kind of thick, not so thick that it would be a mess, but thick enough that when I go to crumple it together in a minute, that I've got some paint that can cover the blank spaces. Once I've got it like I want it, I'm just going to start folding and pressing on the plastic wrap. I've folded it horizontally, and then I'm going to fold it vertically. And you'll see each time you get a little bit more coverage, but you want to get that entire area covered, unless of course you want the color of your blank to show through. I did not want the color of my blank to show through. I want it all covered. So I'm just going to keep folding and pressing and folding and pressing just to try to get plenty of coverage. And see, every time it kind of blends that a little more. I'm not rubbing on it super hard, but I am rubbing on it enough so that it covers all the areas of that plastic wrap. And this what does get your hands a little bit messy. If you wanted to, you could wear gloves. I just did the technique, and then I wiped off my hands, you'll see in a little bit, before I went on. And, never hurts to get your hands a little dirty. It's kind of fun sometimes. And I'm just going to pull that apart. Looks like I'm getting some pretty good coverage there. Got a little spot right there in the middle. Try to cover that up. And you can see why I covered my workspace. All right, now I'm going to just kind of spread it out as flat as I can get it and get ready to transfer it to the piece of cardstock. Just filling in a few more little areas there. Try to get as much coverage as possible. Now see that spot right there? That actually will come out on my blank later, and that's why I recommend not using the piece that you have underneath your painting surface. All right, we've got it all spread out. Now I'm going to take my cardstock and put it face down with that traced area because I want to make sure I cover it, and then just smooth it out as much as possible to make as much contact with that plastic wrap as I can. I'm going to press on it some more. You could even use a squeegee. I just would be afraid that I might, mix the paints maybe a little bit too much, but it might not. I'm just pressing it down with my fingertips. Then I'm going to peel it off, and you'll see that not all of the area is covered. That's okay. We're going to fix that. But I am going to use as much of the paint on my plastic wrap as possible. So I'm just taking the plastic wrap where it has some paint left on it and pressing it down into those areas where I see white. It doesn't really matter. It's just a color blending technique. So it doesn't matter what color is actually ending up there. I'm almost using the plastic wrap like a piece of like a little sponge or something, putting a little bit more paint on it, pressing it down. And I know that looks splotchy, but I promise you it's going to give a good effect. So just keep doing that until you cover all of the white areas. You don't want any white areas. Kind of blend it in, kind of like sponge painting. Now I'm just dipping it in my paint, the paint that was left on the plate, filling it in, filling in all those spots, trying to alternate between the different colors. It seems to have a lot of blue on it, so I'm using mostly the violet and the sea glass. And no matter how many times you do it, it's going to be unique every time. Now that I've got it covered, I'm going to take another piece of plastic wrap, put over it, and just try to get off the excess, what's built up in areas. I want coverage on the paper, but I don't want it so thick that it smears when I put it on the blank. So this will help me just kind of get off the excess. You could probably even use the piece you pull off to do a small transfer, but like I said, the paint tends to get pretty dry and then it doesn't transfer as well to the paper. So I'm just trying to get it as flat as possible. No big globs of paint left on there. I see some more little white areas, so I'm going to fill them in. Even just little specks, just trying to make sure nothing is white. Now I'm going to dry this with a heat gun. You don't have to do that, but I would recommend you let this thoroughly dry, because you'll see as I am moving the heat gun over it and it's drying, some more little white areas are popping up, just little bitty pinhole type areas. And so I'm just taking my paintbrush and covering those up, just kind of dabbing some paint on them and continuing to dry it with the heat gun. And now for the really fun part. So I'm cutting a piece of Artesprix protective paper that's large enough to fold over my transfer. You could also cut two pieces. You're going to make a sublimation sandwich that has the two layers of Artesprix protective paper, your transfer, and your blank. So I'm putting my blank face down on the transfer, and I'm going to tape it down really well with the Artesprix heat tape. I don't want any shifting, so I'm going to tape it all the way across. I've got it there on one side, and now I'm about to tape the other side as well. So your sublimation sandwich is going to be a layer of Artesprix protective paper, and then to press, you want the blank on the bottom. So you'll have the bottom layer will be the Artesprix protective paper. Then you'll have your blank with the transfer taped onto it, and then another layer of Artesprix protective paper on top. When you apply your heat source, you don't want anything in between the heat source and the transfer except for the protective paper. This particular blank was pressed at 400 degrees for 75 seconds. And look at that. It was so gorgeous when I did the reveal, and the camera really doesn't do it justice. I mean, it was like looking into, beautiful blue ocean water or something. I don't know. It's not like that, but it's a beautiful blue marbling, and the colors are so rich and so deep. Now that was hot when I pulled it off, and I should have already had my Artesprix protective mat there, but I didn't. So I got it really quick and put it on there and let it cool completely. But I just wish you could see this in person because it was so gorgeous. I hope that you will try this technique out for yourself. I have been having so much fun finding ways to use the Artesprix paints. And if you like this tutorial, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I post all kind of tutorial videos on here. And you can visit my website. You can email me if you have questions. Just whatever you need, I'm here to help. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.